Hey, welcome to Sermon Recap, and we are in week 3 of Immeasurably More, and I hope your group is growing together. I hope you're challenging each other, and I'm here with Pastor Maggie, who oversees our Radiant group, so this is a lot of your vision. I'm excited about what God's doing with all of our Radiant groups, and Pastor Jose, and he oversees our Clearwater location, and two great pastors on our staff. We're going to talk all things stewardship today, and the message title was, Can God Trust You? Like living in a way that we are trustworthy with what God has given us, and we're asking God for more, and I think God's responding with, well, will you trust me with really be trustworthy with what he's given us right now? And we started this whole message with the idea that God's trustworthy. So, when you think of this idea of God being trustworthy, what comes to your mind?
Well, I think initially one of the biggest verses that God always brings me back to, and is he's trustworthy, is that his ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, which is in Isaiah 55. And honestly, if I were to think about my life, and we're in a generosity series, like what I want to do with my money makes no sense when it comes to like biblical principles, because his ways are higher and his thoughts are better. And so when I think about like God being worthy of trust, especially in the area of finances, it's like I just don't fully understand, and like I can trust God because he is greater and higher than me.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like just in our personal life as well, we've seen God move in mighty and powerful ways, right? But it's always come back to just like defining moments in our life where we've had to choose to be obedient. And it always brings me back to Proverbs chapter 3, where it says to trust in the Lord in all your ways. He will make your path straight. And I think it's like when we see God move in our life and we actually are obedient to that, that's showing, one, that I trust him, but two, now I'm creating a space to actually allow him to move in our lives. And so we've seen God do those things, even just in the last 6 years of our life, with me and my wife being married. And we have our child on the way, which is so exciting. And so we're seeing God do massive things, but it always goes back to us actually learning to trust him, being obedient, and allowing it to become a rhythm in our life.
Yeah. I love that so much. And there are people that are watching this right now, and really the root issue is that you just don't know if God's trustworthy. Mm-hmm. And I want to tell you, from following the Lord for a few decades now, anybody that has followed the Lord for years and decades can tell you one thing: God's faithful and he's trustworthy. Yeah. It doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. There might be some really hard seasons, but God is worth trusting because he is a trustworthy God. And that means that when he tells you to do something, whether it is to go on staff at a church and do something that doesn't make any sense, or move and do something that doesn't make sense, God's telling you to do something, you can trust him. Mm-hmm. We talked in this message about the idea of being trustworthy with what God's put in our hands when it comes to our time, our talents, our treasures, our giftings, our money, all that kind of stuff. Let's talk about any key moments that you've realized, even trusting God with what he's given you.
So my first 5 years in ministry was before I ever came to Radiant. Mm-hmm. Straight out of college, I went into full-time ministry, and I had to fundraise my salary. And that was terrifying to me. Yep. And also, my family don't know the Lord. And so for me, that was like a huge step of faith for me. And I remember struggling so much with the Lord through like, okay, you've called me to this, so like it's your problem. Like, how do I do this? Like, where is this money going to come from? And so when I was working in college ministry, and our rule was like you had to have 75% of your salary raised for the year before you could ever step foot on campus. And I was like so close to the goal, and it was the last day before campus was supposed to start. And I was like $50 a month away from where I needed to be in order to show up for my job. And I was like, God, what are you doing? Like, why are we down to the wire? This is like so painful. Like, everybody else is funded. Like, why isn't this working out for me? And I had such a tangible need where I was like crying out to God. And I worked hard. Like, I made the phone calls, I sent the emails, I did all the things. And it hit 9 p.m. and I was like, okay, nobody's answering their phone anymore. Like, people are trying to put their kids to bed. Like, okay, this is it. And so if this is what God has for me, like maybe I'm just not supposed to be on campus tomorrow. And I went and I ate dinner, and I was like, okay, God, like, this is yours. And literally 30 minutes later, somebody called me and said, hey, I just checked my email. Do you like still have a need to get to campus? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, how much is it? I told them $50 a month. They're like, great, well, we'll pledge $75 a month.
Come on.
And so I got to go to campus the next day. And so I think one that was a very hard season of my life, 5 years of fundraising, but that was also like where I got to see God show up so tangibly when it comes to money that now I'm like, well, yeah, if God's calling me to it, if God's asking me to do this, like my job is obedience. My job is to show up and be faithful, and like He's going to take care of the rest.
He does.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in our life, like just thinking through the last 6 years of our life. So a little bit about our story is, I was in full-time ministry, but then felt the call to go into the military. So I did that for 7 years, right? I knew I was called back to full-time ministry, but we didn't know what that looked like. And so 6 years ago, me and my wife, we decided to move back to Tampa, got a part of the church, and we just started being a part of the church. And eventually the Lord opened a door for us to actually be on staff at the church. And it was either re-enlisting in the military, which comes with its benefits. Things are great there, or taking a risk living in South Tampa, which if you know South Tampa, it's expensive to live there.
Yep.
And we're like, we don't really know what we're going to do, but we just kind of like what Maggie said, we became obedient. And so we've like been able to just learn that in our lives to become obedient, to say yes when God asks us to do something. And now, we own our first home, which is amazing. We love living there, which is hard in this market, but God's always been providing. And it's always because we've just always said yes when He's asked us to do something.
I love that story. And I think there's people that are watching this right now and you're like, man, I'm believing God for more, but what you just heard from both of them is like, okay, the more comes by being faithful in the season God's got you in right now. Okay, I'm going to start serving in the church. I don't know what's next, but I'm going to just be faithful today. I'm going to start fundraising. I love how you said, like, I did my part. You weren't just sitting in some room just praying, going, okay, God, you make it happen. I made the phone calls and I hustled and I believed God for it. There is something about the fact of like, no, God cares about how we handle what He's given us. That really determines our ability to handle more. I say it all the time, how you handle something determines how you handle everything. And if God can trust you with that $100, He can trust you with $1,000. Like how you handle the Toyota Corolla determines how you'll handle the Tesla if you want to buy one of those. It's like, make sure that how you handle small things really, really matters. I said a statement on Sunday that I want to make sure you get. I said, our purchases indicate our priorities. Another way of saying it is that every spending decision is a spiritual decision. And you should be able to look through your finances and see, like, am I a good steward of what God has given me when it comes to my finances? Are they in a way that brings God the most glory? And I don't want people feeling guilty. You shouldn't feel guilty if you want to go, through McDonald's. Maybe you feel guilty if you're eating McDonald's, but feel like guilty if you're, going to Disney and doing something fun. But you do need to understand the priorities are shown in your purchases. Yeah.
So true. And okay, so shout out to Foundations, obviously, Groups Pastor. I have to give a shout out to Foundations. There is one week where we talk about spiritual disciplines. And I remember very distinctly as I was leading a group through Foundations, the Lord was like, hey, you need to work on simplicity yourself because like it's very clear that I can look at, well, like you said, where my money is going and being like, okay, I want to be more generous with my finances, or like, I want to be able to give above and beyond the tithe, but like I'm, swiping on the smallest things that seem inconsequential, but in the long run, they add up. And so the Lord really like convicted me because I was looking around my house and I was like, I have 8 different types of shampoo and I have like a million throw blankets. I'm like, who needs all of this? Like, it's just crazy. And it was getting to a point where it was like, I bought things because of impulse or because, media is really persuasive and that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, so if I really trust the Lord with my finances, if I really believe that what I spend matters and like where my money goes matters for eternity and also can have an impact for the kingdom, then why am I buying this extra throw blanket when I already have like so many? So it really challenged me in the discipline of simplicity to like reevaluate where I was actually spending my money, because it just didn't add up when I was looking at what my priorities and my values actually were. And so the Lord has brought me through this journey for like years now. And I can't say that I'm like perfect at it. Like it's still something that I'm constantly working on because we're constantly inundated with you need more, you need more, you need more. We talked about that in an earlier sermon this semester. But with that, like I only have one shampoo and one conditioner now. So I guess the Lord's doing something to me.
And for us guys, we have 3 in 1. We put it all together. I mean, we really simplify the whole process. I do want to hit on simplicity for a little bit. There's a statement that years ago I preached about, and it has been something that, it's one of those things when you communicate so many times as you're preparing to communicate, God's speaking to you about your own life. And one of those statements that really marked my life is that I want to live simply so that other people can simply live.
Wow.
And it's like, there are things that I want to invest in for eternity when it comes to lives changed and helping the poor and helping those who are far from God and doing stuff in missions. And I realize that there's going to have to be some sacrifices that are made. And this is not popular preaching, because so much of your life is immeasurably more. There's more boats for you and more houses and more vacations. And we love that. And I do think God blesses us with so much cool stuff. But there's sometimes that God wants you to simplify your life.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not taking that extra trip, or maybe it's not buying that extra vacation house, so that you can invest in something that is going to make an eternal difference. And it really does matter.
Yeah, I think it's funny, just the purchases thing, because I don't know about everyone else, but I have like this habit that if I see something I like, I send it to my wife on Instagram. And I'm like, might need to buy. I literally just did this yesterday, and I sent her a pair of shoes. I was like, I might need to buy this shoe, and I just keep sending it, right? Waiting for the moment where I can actually purchase it.
Right.
Well, obviously, we're in a season now where we have to reassess all of our priorities because we have a child on the way, and it's like, yeah, I want to buy that shoe, but I actually need to buy a stroller. Because it's the wants versus the needs thing, right? And so I've come to realize, which I think even just in the priority aspect, like one of my favorite quotes is, if it matters to you, you'll make time for it. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to our stewardship, when it comes to the generosity of who we are and how we carry ourselves. Like, if God is a priority in our life and it's the most important thing, how are we actually making time to be generous, to create spaces in which we are giving, and actually learning how to steward the things in which God has given us, so that we're actually making more for Him to move in our lives at the same time?
I'll tell you what my wife and I have been doing, and Katie challenged me with this. And so she says throughout the week, if she needs something or whatever, she'll write a little list, but she won't go on Amazon at all. And she'll finally and she does one afternoon, one day a week. And she's like, in the afternoon, I'll go through the whole list and I'll figure out, is it actually needed?
That's so good.
And I give one time throughout the week to do this stuff, because she's like, I'm not going to spend my entire week just scrolling. Oh, what do I need? Look at this. Look at this new thing. Oh, man, I saw this online. And it's like, it'll consume your life, because materialism will consume your life. Yeah. She's like, so I set one time, I can do this thing. And it's intentionality. It's the same thing. It's like, hey, we give this way, we walk this way. And her approach to us is like, we spend more time searching for things that we think will make us happy, when the reality is the thing that makes us most joyful is walking in generosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we don't really search that out too much. And so her thing is like, get off of all the social media that I'm trying to stare at to find what I need next, and just walk in what really brings satisfaction, which is giving and making an impact in people's lives. So how you handle something determines how you handle everything. And we talked about on Sunday, man, are you intentionally giving? Are you on a budget? Are you taking care of what God's giving you right here? Because it really does matter. And let's talk about our kingdom priorities. I know that we talked about things in the idea of giving and generosity, and how do you evaluate your life to make sure, are my priorities kingdom values? Or are they really what just I want?
I mean, I can share first. So I already shared a little bit about how I started in ministry, and I was fundraising my salary. Well, that also meant that I was not making a lot of money. And, sometimes it's really hard. And like, that's really like a season that people walk through. Like, it's not uncommon for somebody, especially straight out of college, to be like, okay, like, where's my next meal? Ramen noodles. Okay, cool. And so I was in that season of life. And I remember being challenged to actually start tithing in that season. And I was like, God, I don't even know where like I'm going to be able to pay for the tires on my car, let alone like my next meal not being ramen noodles or something better, Like, how am I supposed to give to the church? Like, how am I supposed to give 10% of this sad little salary that I have? And he brought me to Luke 16, verses 10 and 11. And it says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And I look back on that season and I was like, okay, God, I'm going to be obedient. Like, this is hard. I don't really know, like, how we're going to make ends meet here, but I'm going to give my 10%, even though it was small. And now I can look back and see every single time that like I got a pay raise and I increased my tithe, or I started giving above and beyond my tithe. The Lord has been so faithful and so good to continue to increase my actual salary that like he's taking care of every need.
amazing.
And now I'm like, okay, great. I'm living on a budget, but it's because I want to live on a budget in order to be generous.
Love that.
So yeah,
Yeah,
God is
and I
good.
think kind of just like to even get there, it's like, at least in my life, the things that I've done, and we talk about it all the time here already. It's about being on a Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, the way that I've used it is that it's helped me kind of just refocus, kind of just make sure that everything I'm doing in my life actually aligns to God, like the things He wants to do. Because the reality is that like we are so consumed with the world, the things that we got to do, the things we got to pay, the things that we have to make sure is happening, that we're thinking about ourselves and our lives instead of what God wants to do in our lives and through our lives. And so I think just with the Sabbath itself, it's helped me to kind of just realign and refocus to the things that God actually wants me to do with the things He's given me, with the money He's given me, the finances and the stewardship, so that I'm not just wasting it on things that actually won't make an internal impact in the things in which He's calling us to do.
Yeah.
My challenge is, as you are on this spiritual journey and this growth journey, is evaluate what God has put in your hand right now. I mean, when we think of the story of the boy with his 5 loaves and 2 fish, you know, it's like, of course, we want more in our hands, but what we understand is that little in the hands of God can do much. And when I think of your life, I want you to know that God can do significantly, immeasurably more through your life than you can ask, think, or imagine. But it starts with you being faithful with what God's put in your hands, with the calling He's put in your hand, the influence He's given you. I think of Radiant 12 years ago. You know, it wasn't multiple campuses. It wasn't even multiple services. It was just Katie and I, a small team, and in a rundown, dirty dollar theater that was voted the most haunted place in Tampa Bay, by the way. And yet we went in there and we loved it. We were so happy with what God had given us. And I think that contentment with what God has given us and the stewardship of it is what brought the multiplication in our lives. And it's the same with your life. It's the faithfulness in the salary that God's given you right now, faithfulness in your giving, faithfulness in your time, faithfulness with the friends that God's given you. Watch how stewardship really matters. I ended the message, and we'll give one last challenge with the idea that you might not be trustworthy right now, but you can be. And your reputation can change. Even your attitude can change. And you go, well, I haven't really been good at this in my life. You can be. Give them a quick challenge before we go.
Yeah. So if you're not sure what to do with your finances, my number one challenge would be to go through Financial Peace University. So again, another group's shameless plug here.
Yep.
But it is a great way to look at how to look at money from kingdom principles and also how to get out of debt and be generous and all that kind of stuff. So that's one like practical way to do it, but then also just Malachi 3:10, you know, we talk about it when we talk about giving, but it says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. And I just love that passage because God actually says, please test me in this, which is the only passage where He says that. And so when it comes to money, like there can be so much fear and like concern about it, but our God knows, and our God is Jehovah Jireh, and like He can provide all of our needs. But at the end of the day, like He's saying, do this. And so it's a matter of obedience. So just start.
I love it.
Yeah, I think you said it in the message. It says, being a steward isn't just something you do, it's who you are. And I think in like today's society, we want to be better parents. We want to be better leaders. We want to be better owners of things. And these are things that we are trying to gain knowledge in, grow in, learn in. And I think it's the same thing in stewardship. Like you can become a better steward. You just got to learn more. It's not just about managing resources or managing money. No, it's like learning how to be a better kingdom steward of the things that God has given us. And you can grow into that. All you have to do is be obedient and trust in God and start somewhere, which is exactly what Maggie said. Like you got to start somewhere, be consistent, and I think that God can actually move in your life.
And I would challenge you, even in your group, man, challenge each other. Like, how are you doing on your stewardship? How are you doing on stewarding the time you have, the job you have? You're like, well, I believe in God for more. I'm my next career, but are you faithful in the one God's given you right now? And stewardship is everything. How you handle something determines how you'll handle anything. And if you won't be faithful in the small, God will never give you the more. And we're believing through this series, you're going to walk into immeasurably more. How do you do it? You start with what God's put in your hand right now.